Thank you for that. History will only tell how great his impact has been. We thank you for this time together. We ask that you would bless us and keep us in your name. Amen. Amen. Well, I'm Nancy Jen, and I'm the chaplain here at San Joaquin Gardens. And I'd like to start this afternoon by reading a letter that came from someone who was a teacher under Carl's when he was a principal, elementary principal. Dear Pat and family, I was so saddened by the news of Carl's passing. He made us all feel like family. Actually, Pat, you and Carl raised most of his Miramonte staff. He was one of the few principals willing to take a risk with us young ones. I am delighted he did. He was a tremendous mentor, educator, and friend. He was so giving of his time. We all used to love spending time with him on your sailboat, at your home, or celebrating a victory at the local restaurants. When I first started teaching, I wanted to save all my students. When I became frustrated with the parents, he used to remind me that I had control over my students in my classroom, but then I would have to learn to let go once they left for the day. I think he was telling me that I needed some balance in my life. I couldn't worry about them 24/7. Great fatherly advice. I just wanted you to know that you are all in my thoughts and prayers. We lost a good one. Fondly, Sherry Carlton. Well, what do you say is the difference between a teacher and an educator? And as I was thinking about what I wanted to share this afternoon, I found a wonderful article. And so I'm talking to Carl as though he were seated here. Carl Drow, you were much more than a teacher. You were an educator and much, much more. You all know that child who doesn't have someone advocating for them. As an educator, you were in a position to advocate for and fight for what was best for that child. Wow, what an awesome responsibility. Where else in the world do you get to work with so many different personalities, egos, and varied life experiences, all in the course of one day? If as an educator you can't find something to learn from your students, then you aren't looking hard enough. In what other profession can you literally witness the growth and development of a child on a daily basis? You were in a position to see firsthand the progress and growth that took place every single day in the classrooms, in your schools. You were able to take a student who possibly knew very little about his or her interests and help them discover and explore those interests while simultaneously watching them change before your eyes. How many other professions can say they are a punching bag for the media and the sole reason for all problems in society? Joking aside, educators seem to get all the attention. How cool is that to always be in the limelight? On a serious note, if what you were doing wasn't important, then people wouldn't have noticed. Some of your students will get to know you better than anyone else in their lives. You will spend more time with some of your students than even their own family members. You will get to experience all the highs and lows right alongside your students. Being this much a part of their lives was definitely what made your principal work an awesome job. In what other profession can you continue to learn and grow in the areas you are passionate about and say that it's part of your job? Then on top of that, Carl, you got to share your passion and interest with others while getting paid to do it. Sounds like a win-win to me. Research is quite clear in that a great teacher has a tremendous impact on the life of a child. That is not just related to academic achievement, but to all the facets of their life. When you thought about something you wanted to do, did it matter? Do you remember that this would keep this child fresh and your mind growing? You get to be an entertainer, an actress or actor, a Gumby-like person almost every day. I know that edutainment mindset is not the most popular at times, but aren't you first trying to sell yourself? If the kids aren't buying into you, then they will never buy into what you're trying to accomplish in the classroom. I think Carl Drow took full advantage of this wonderful opportunity. How many of you as teachers here had Carl as a mentor principal? Wonderful. Did any of you here have him as a teacher? Well, I'm going to read you a poem from the point of view of a 5-year-old student. It's called The Ode to Teachers. I remember the first day, how I looked down hoping you wouldn't see me, and when I glanced up, I saw your smile shining like a soft light from deep inside you. I'm listening, you encourage us. Come on, join our conversation. Let us hear your neon certainties, thorny doubts, and tangled angers. For the weeks I hid inside myself. I read and reread your notes, praising my writing, and you whispered, we need you and your stories and your questions, that like a fresh path will take us to new vistas. Slowly your faith grew into my courage, and for you, instead of handing you a note or an apple or flowers, I raised my hand. I carry your smile and faith inside like I carry my dog's face or my sister's laugh. Creamy melodies, the softness of sunrise, steady blessing of stars, the autumn smell of gingerbread, and the security of a sweater on a chilly day. One of the most enduring and valuable words you can hear is teacher. There were many men and women who acknowledged Jesus as the carpenter of Nazareth, or the miracle worker, or the man who contradicted the religious authorities of his day. But rarely was there a title which Jesus embraced more dearly than that of rabbi, teacher. His calling to be Messiah was first a calling to teach, and the world is his classroom. Have you called Jesus teacher? If so, what a privilege. If not today, it's a perfect day to begin. As we celebrate father, brother, uncle, grandfather, great-grandfather, and teacher, Carl Drow. Thank you.
Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread,
right, so first of all, we want to thank Nancy for the beautiful prayer and letter reading beforehand. And then also my Aunt Robyn, my cousins Hannah and Hunter Reilly for singing the Lord's Prayer. Thank you very much. So I've got a lot of notes up here, and I spoke to a lot of people about well, first of all, I'm going to introduce myself. I'm Joseph Drow Reilly. I am Carl Drow's oldest grandson. I was born in August 81, so I've been fortunate enough to have my grandfather with me for the last 36 years. And it's been a blessing. So, you know, that's who I am. Now, I listened to the letters and the prayer and all of that opened this celebration, and you know they already covered everything for me. It's, you know, the educator, the guy who, you know, the social guy, all of these great things about my grandfather. So we're going to spend the next few minutes just getting to know each other and Grandpa better, and I think that's probably the way that we're going to go with this. So again, thank you to Nancy and my aunt and my cousins for the beautiful intro. And we're going to get this going. So, you know, my mom and grandmother asked me to speak today about a month ago, and I was just, you know, okay, great. I'd love to go and, you know, give tribute to my grandfather the best I can. But, you know, I only had my own individual experiences with him, right, and the family experiences. So we reached out to my cousins, my aunts and uncles, and anybody who would listen to talk about Grandpa, Carl Drow. We're going to interchange that. You know, you guys can call him Grandpa, I'll call him Carl. You know, we're just not going to call him late for dinner. But when gathering information and stories to speak today, it quickly became apparent that to his family and friends, Grandpa was a man of many talents: musician, sailor, waterman, and educator, just to name a few. And these talents manifested themselves in many ways with his friends and family. Again, with the intro that Nancy provided, you know, Grandpa was a social guy who wanted to share his interests with those he loved and was close to. He wanted to hear about what's going on in our lives and to share the things that he was interested in and communicate with us. The best way to describe what I heard from many people is that Grandpa liked a good party. You know, he liked, and so here we are in this room together. We're gonna have a party. We're gonna celebrate Grandpa. This is a happy event for us. You know, we're sad he passed away, but let's celebrate the best parts of Grandpa. So it didn't matter the size of the party. It could have been 2 people, 20. I don't know how many people are in here, but there are a lot of people in here right now. Grandpa liked the party. Tailgate parties, holiday parties, birthday parties, you name it. Grandpa was right there in the thick of it. He wanted to be with us, and we wanted to be with him. And there was a exchange going on. Us, you know, it was equal. And so that's what we're here today, to remember and celebrate Carl Drow. So who was Carl Drow? My grandpa, dad, other people, you know, my mom's dad, my cousin, my aunts and uncles, their dad as well. So Grandpa and his brother John were raised by their maternal grandparents following the death of their mother when Carl was 6 years old. And their grandpa had a market in Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan, where he sold fresh fruits and vegetables. Carl loved to tell about trips to Florida for fresh produce. And once they brought an alligator home and placed it in the store window. Grandpa loved this story, all right? But guess what? Winter on the Upper Peninsula of Michigan comes around, Sault Ste. Marie, the alligator froze. All right, so frozen alligator in the front of the window. I love that story. They lived above the store in Michigan until the early 40s, when their grandpa loaded the whole family, including uncles, into an old Chevy truck and set out for California. Upon arrival in California, they camped under the Highway 99 bridge in Kingsburg. All right, so just as a show of hands, who has driven across the 99 bridge in Kingsburg? All right, if you're not raising your hand, you know, you haven't traveled far out of Fresno. So, but it's you know, we drove over it. I've driven over that thing 100 some times in my lifetime, and to know that at a certain point, you know, there was the home of Grandpa Drow, or it's where he ended up. It's just amazing to me. So when they got here, they didn't have jobs. And so it was decided that they were going to follow the crops and harvest fruit and potatoes in California, Oregon, and Washington. And this life continued until Carl and his brother John were ready to go to high school, and their grandpa decided that they should settle somewhere. So they settled in Early Mart to go to Delano High School. And needless to say, when they got to school, they had, you know, so in their travels, they went to numerous elementary schools. And then when they got to high school at Delano High School, they had stories to tell. And I'm sure they were very popular at Delano High School. Carl, my grandpa, played center on the Delano Tigers championship football team. He played football all 4 years in high school. And one of his teams was was inducted into the Delano High School Hall of Fame not too long ago. So, it was something that he took a lot of pride in, even throughout his life. He also enjoyed acting in the junior and senior plays at the high school, and he had a lot of friends, as we can imagine. So this is the part where he meets my grandma, okay? Grandpa had seen Pat, my grandma, in the hallways at school and talked to her occasionally. Somehow or the other, they ended up together on an MYF winter hayride. And this was the beginning of their 65-year relationship that brought 3 daughters, Lori Reilly, Terry Liserson, and Kathy Shelburne. His son, David Drow, his grandchildren, me, Jennifer Shelburne, Hollis Reilly, Corey Liserson, Rebecca Walker, Chris Liserson, Orion, and Michelle Drow. So, and he has 3 great-grandchildren with 2 more on the way. So this is that 65-year relationship blossomed into a very big family. So if I can get the Drows, the Rileys, the Lisersons, Shelburns, and all related family members to stand up, and just so we can see how many people, this came out of this 65-year relationship. So, all right. Thank you guys, appreciate it. So following their marriage, Grandpa went to college, and he attended college at the College of Sierras, Bakersfield Junior High, and Fresno State. Go Dogs! I see some red jackets back there. Go Dogs, go! I've got my Grandpa's Bulldog socks on, so the start of a big deal in our family was Fresno State and the Bulldogs. But after 3 years of college, at 21, he decided to seek a teaching job with no teaching experience, and so he started teaching the 8th grade with a provisional credential. He loved teaching, and the kids loved him, as we can see from the teachers that are here today and the stories we've heard. So in 1961, he got his regular credential, and his started his career at the Clovis Unified School District. Let's talk about Grandpa, personally. He was a romantic, and on Valentine's Day, he always presented my grandma with a beautiful handmade card and original love poem. His favorite song was Nat King Cole's Too Young. So, and he had many hobbies and interests, and he, one of the things about Grandpa that I want to express is that, he was just as interested in our world as he wanted to share his world with. So we talk about his hobbies and interests. This led to a whole, generations-long love affair from our family with some of the things that we're going to talk about. And so he loved sailing and had many different boats. He and Pat owned Drow sailboats and enjoyed sailing with friends. Grandpa, along with Grandma and my Aunt Kathy, won many races, including the national championship for the Catalina 22 class, and he was also the Commodore of the National California Catalina 22 Association. So I mentioned these interests that Grandpa shared with us, and that in turn we shared with him, because these weren't solitary pursuits on Grandpa's part. He brought us into the fold. He showed us what he was interested in, and we got, at the same time, he got to learn from his grandchildren, his kids, everybody, of what we were interested in. So we talked about a couple of them. We want to highlight some of these things. So Grandpa was a musician, and you could easily go and lock yourself in a room and play guitar and sing songs all by yourself without ever being heard. That wasn't Grandpa. All right? I can't remember a day spent with my grandpa where he didn't pull out that guitar, or place the music on the stereo too loud, or sing us a song off the top of his head, And Grandpa had these books, songbooks, whether it was the I think Mel Bay is one of the guitar instructors. He had these classic songbooks that had everything from pop standards to folk standards, things that people, today we don't get to hear. He had these books, and he could open them up and start strumming the guitar, and the saying goes that, all you need are 3 chords and the truth, and I think Grandpa really took that to heart. That was part of the experience with Grandpa and the music. It didn't matter if we could sing in tune. I can't, but we would sing together and really enjoy ourselves. So even recently, with my son and my sister, his great grandkids, Adam and Crosby, we'd go visit, and what would he do? He'd pull out his guitar, bang out a couple chords and sing us a song, and he'd pull out his harmonicas and have Crosby or Adams singing along and trying their hardest to get it to sound out of that harmonica. So, that was something that he shared with us. That was something that, and now we have, 3 generations of Drows and Reileys and Lizersons and Shelburnes that love music. I'm a big music fan, so that was something that he shared with us. Another one of his interests, and we've talked a lot about it, was sailing. And it's not just sailing. I like to think what I call Grandpa was a waterman. He could drive any boat. All right, he could fish for any fish, and I say fish for any fish because he couldn't catch every fish. All right, that's an important thing. So he knew what to do. All right, but we didn't always catch those fish. So, but his time, again, this is what Grandpa was that his time spent on boats wasn't an individual thing that he did by himself. He needed a crew to make those boats go, and his family became the tightest knit crew from Millerton Lake all the way up to Discovery Day in Washington. I talk about fish for any fish because, again, like I said, he had everything. I remember one time when I was probably 10 or 11, when my grandparents were living in Port Townsend, and there was a squid run into the marina, right? Thousands upon thousands of these tiny 8 to 10 inch squid, translucent things, just came into the marina, this lagoon. And guess what? Grandpa had the lure, all right, in his box, for my sister Hollis and I to go out there and jig for these salmon. What were we going to do with them? I don't know. I think we used them for bait later on, but I mean, if you can bear with me, we would go out there, 10-year-old Joe, 8-year-old Hollis, and stand on the floating docks, jigging for these squid. And when you catch one, guess what? You catch it and they're hooked on this thing, and all of a sudden squid just starts spraying everywhere, all right? Tagging boats, tagging people, tagging everyone in sight. And Grandpa Hollis and I got the biggest thrill out of it, right? Grandpa got the biggest kick out of it, and I'm sure his neighbors in the neighboring berths were like, what are these kids doing here? Why are they, running around screaming? But Grandpa it didn't matter to Grandpa. We were there and just screaming and yelling on the docks, having so much fun. So it's a memory that my sister and I share. But all of us have stories about trying to catch what I tagged as the mythical salmon. We'd be up there in the Puget Sound, famous for these salmon, and Grandpa we'd wake up at 6 in the morning, get on that bayliner, go out Discovery Bay, have everything set and ready to go, and guess what? Like, we would catch 20 dogfish. You know what dogfish is? Those little mini sharks. They are exciting to catch, but after you catch 2 of them, you're a little tired of them. And Grandpa hated those dogfish, and we could talk about the things that came out of his mouth about them. We could talk about the things that we did to the dogfish, but that's not for today. But so let's go back to the mythical salmon, because this was a big deal. And my little sister one day, hooked onto a salmon, and we brought it on board the boat. And everybody was excited. We were high-fiving and hugging. I mean, this was like a multi-year-long pursuit for at least the Reilly kids. And so Grandpa was so excited about catching that salmon that nobody figured out to look at a calendar or a guidebook or anything. And so they weren't even in season. So I don't think Grandpa ever talked about it. He talked about it with us, all right? But when he went back down to the Marina and Yacht Club, it was like, I never caught a salmon. No. So, but that's one of my favorite Grandpa stories. And it was him, showing us his world. He was retired, up there in Washington, and he'd taken in his grandkids. Him and Grandma would take in grandkids for a week. 10, 12 years old, and just show us the world. So we got to see from them, and then they were just as interested in what was going on in our little 10 and 12-year-old lives. So I just want to keep going back to that, because it was always an equal exchange with Grandpa. And so finally, we talk about him as a teacher, and we see, he has his former, his teachers that worked with him when he was a principal or as a colleague here. That's a testament to what Grandpa was all about. And we have a member of my family, my cousin Jenny, followed in his footsteps as a teacher. So, that was part of our experience with Grandpa. He was a teacher. He was a lifelong educator. So, and I think it's a rough estimate. Somebody said hundreds of kids, and then maybe thousands of lives. I wrote down thousands of kids passed through his classrooms or schools that he was in charge of. But that job or calling, it didn't stop when the bell rang. He came home and talked to us about books and ideas, and checked up on our report cards, giving us $1 for a good, if it passed muster. And I'm very sure, I can guarantee you, that some of my cousins made off way better than I did with their dollars on their report card. Because, I have some very smart cousins and sister in the family, but I didn't, they got a 2-to-1 deal on me. That's okay, look at where I am now. All right? But this made an impact on everybody, and like I said, my cousin Jennifer followed in his footsteps. She's a teacher in Ventura, and I think she's getting active in the teachers union and advocating for her profession, for her students. So, this all rubbed off on us. And that was the way that Grandpa was. Again, it was an equal exchange between, at least on my level with him, being, he was my grandpa. I don't remember how much older he was, but it didn't matter. So, I'm going to wrap this up because I've got some other people who want to speak. But there are just a few snapshots. These are just a few snapshots of what Carl Drow, my grandpa, meant to us. And there are countless parts of his life and the way that he touched ours that we could spend the rest of the day talking about. And guess what? We probably will, because we're going to have a reception. We're going to talk about these stories and these things about Grandpa coming up. And I know that in the future we're going to talk about him at every holiday, every birthday party, and especially our tailgates, Go Dogs Go. But I just want to finish with something it's a saying that means a lot to me. It's something that, I work in the maritime industry, spent some time in the Coast Guard, and so it's something that's in my blood. I think I got it in my blood from Grandpa Drow, the sailor's heart. So it's an honor for me whenever I've been able to tell somebody this, and it's definitely been an honor for me whenever somebody said it to me. So I'm going to finish my part of it today with Carl W. Drow. We wish you fair winds and following seas. Thank you very much. And so if there's anybody else in the room that would like to say something about Grandpa or has something to say, please come on up. Uncle John. So thank you very much.